young men and women are only willing to leave the safety of their homes, the safety of a foxhole, the safety of a bunker, the safety of a crater, and move into those kind of conditions and conditions that are unknown and uncertain, if they have confidence in themselves, if they believe in the values they represent, if they have confidence in the man and woman or woman to their left or right, and if they know that there's a little Verizon network behind them that is ensuring that they've got the doctrine right, the organization right, the equipment right, and the family support right. And that will never change. We are service-based and values-based, and we must remain and we must continue to struggle at times to maintain that service and values base. Sam Damon, this is a fictional character. If you haven't ever read We Were Once an Eagle by Anton Meyer, you must read it at some point. It was made into a movie, but the movie, as usual, didn't live up. Now remember, I got my master's in English from Duke, so you knew I was going to say this, that the movie never lived up to the potential of the book. But the point is, in this book, there's contrasting leadership styles. There's a leader who is extraordinarily talented by the name of Courtney Massingale, but he's also extraordinarily ambitious. And he will, given the chance to do so, achieve rank and achieve stature by crawling over his subordinates, not by developing them, not by standing on their shoulders. And then there's a character by the name of Sam Damon. He's the more exemplary character, as you will come to conclude. He cares deeply about his soldiers, cares deeply about his profession. And at one point, at the end of the book, he's talking to a protege. He's at the end of his career, and a protege says to him, you know, at that time, he's General Damon. He says, General Damon, how do I become a good officer? And Sam Damon says, well, look, let me put it this way. If it ever comes to a choice between being a good person or a good officer, be a good person. Because that's what being good leaders is about, being good people. And that will never change. So there's two things now that I've suggested to you must never change. The other one is that we're a profession that's built on trust. Again, it's that image of what causes young men and women to willingly put themselves in harm's way. They have to trust you. You have to trust you. You have instincts. If you're here today, you have already demonstrated that you have instincts far beyond your peers at this point in their development. Continue to develop that. Continue to find ways to build trust inside of your organizations so that the young men and women who are serving below you and those adjacent to you and those above you know that your interests are in the best interest of those who you serve and in the unit in which you serve. Establish that trust, and when it comes time for you to ask someone to do something very difficult, then they'll do it. And the last thing is the fundamentals will never change. You know, our Army has been asked to do many, many things. As you've seen, disaster relief. In Baghdad in 2003, we came up with the acronym SWET, S-W-E-T, sewer, water, energy, and trash removal. Because at that time, that was the mission. We had to restore a sense of civility and a sense of stability to Baghdad. You're going to be asked to do the same thing. Armies and those that populate them and leaders who lead them can and must be prepared to do a lot of things. That's what we mean by versatile and adaptable. But at the end of the day, we must never lose the skills required to do the one thing that an Army does uniquely for the country, and that is to deliver lethal effects if it becomes necessary to do so, or as Franklin Delano Roosevelt said, the capacity to defend the country with force when affairs require that force be used. And so as you have gone through this seminars this week and as you've read about your profession and thought about your profession, I suspect at times it seems a little unclear what we really want you to do at the point where you find yourself in your career. Let me clear it up for you. Master your weapon system, whatever that weapon system has to be. And I mean master it. There's a great book by Malcolm Gladwell called Outliers, who talks about how does someone become a master of his trade. Your trade is leadership. You become a master of your trade, Malcolm Gladwell says, after 10,000 hours of practice. If you do the math, 10,000 hours of practice is about a decade. Master your weapon system in a way that causes you to have confidence in it, confidence in its employment, and so you can be within your formation an expert on it. If you're a tanker, then you better be the best damn tanker that ever strapped it on. If you're an infantryman, you better be able to hit what you aim at. And your soldiers better know that if you're the guy on their flank, you can deal with what comes your way. The second fundamental, it seems to me, is small unit tactics. Sometimes in the effort to become experts in other things outside of strictly military affairs, we might shortchange ourselves in the time we spend on tactics. Don't let that happen. You have to understand fire and maneuver. You have to understand the integration of direct and indirect fire. You have to understand how to structure an engagement area. You have to know how to commit a reserve. You have to understand how to use terrain, because we are the force that conducts military operations on land. So you have to understand time-distance factors. You have to understand intervisibility lines. You have to be the masters of small unit tactics on the ground, where people live and where the enemy tends to populate. The third thing is you need to understand, as a fundamental, the relationship with your non-commissioned officers. You have heard time and time again that the NCOs are the backbone of our Army, and they are. So I won't repeat that cliche. But we should never take that for granted. And you should never just assume that you and your non-commissioned officer are going to partner. You have to work at that. It's back to that issue of trust. It's back to that issue of commitment and confidence. It's back to that 10,000 hours to become the expert. But your non-commissioned officers have to understand you, and you have to understand them, and that's fundamental. And I was out speaking at the Sergeant Major's Academy, and I was giving them a very what I thought was a very uplifting speech. Told them how wonderful they are, told them they were the backbone of the Army, and the Commandant of the Sergeant Major's Academy, his name is Sergeant Major Ray Chandler, pulled me aside afterwards and said, "You got to stop doing that." I said, "Stop doing what?" He said, you got to stop pumping sunshine in their ear. He didn't say ear. And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Because they're getting complacent. They're starting to believe it. They're starting to believe that they're that good." I said, "I got the message." So, get to know your non-commissioned officers. They'll get to know you. It has to be a team.